Hello and thanks for joining me. As you can see, I'm in my workshop and I'm about to perform a 10,000 mile service on my Triumph Scrambler 1200 here. This is its first major service. Now there are a number of things that you need to do with this service, but what I'm going to do is focus the video on the big jobs, which are changing the oil and the oil filter and changing the air filter. And I'm actually going to change the air filter over to a high performance fabric filter rather than just replace the paper filter. I'll also include in the video running all the electronic diagnostic checks and resetting the service interval. But please be aware that there are a number of other things that you need to do as part of the 10,000 mile service. I won't necessarily include them all in the video, but I do have here the official Triumph service sheet which sets out all of the work that you need to do, and I will be following that. Now you can get a copy of this off the Triumph website, but just for convenience, if you are wanting to do a service yourself and you're following what I'm doing in the video, I will also post a copy of this service sheet on my Facebook page. So I think there's a link here on YouTube, but if you skip across to my Facebook page, which is Songs from the Saddle Facebook page, you'll find a copy of it posted there. And just in case you're watching this video several months after I post it, then I will label it Triumph Scrambler 1200 service sheet. So if you go to my Facebook page, you can do a search and you can find it under that name. So I hope that's helpful for you. Right, so let's get straight into it then. One of the important things that you do whenever you're servicing your bike is checking it all over. And so one of the best things to start with is washing your bike, giving it a good clean. Two benefits to that. Firstly, you're then working on a clean bike when you're doing the servicing. And secondly, by giving it a good clean, you are actually checking the bike over. So you're checking for things that may be loose or broken or worn. And importantly, you're also checking for possible leaks of oil or cooling fluid, things like that, giving the bike a good check over. So I actually washed my bike yesterday and gave it a real good clean. And one of the things that I decided whilst checking it all over is that I need to change the chain and sprockets, the rear drive chain and sprockets. So I need to order those, so I won't be doing that job today, but I will video that once I get the new chain and sprockets in. So yeah, that's one thing which I picked up from that little job. So yeah, important just to check everything over and check things as well, things like your fluid levels in your master cylinders, your fluid level for your reservoir, for your coolant system, and of course the oil level. However, as we're about to change the oil, that's less important, other than just to see whether or not your bike is burning oil. Okay, so the first job I'm going to get into and record now is changing the engine oil. It's best to warm the engine up before you do this, so I've had the bike running outside for a little while to warm up the engine. I've brought it into the workshop now, and so I'm going to change the oil and filter. So for my oil change, the oil that I'll be using is this Castrol Power 1, which is 10W40. It's fully synthetic oil, and it's what's recommended by Triumph. And it's actually the same oil that I use in several of my other bikes, so I tend to buy this in bulk. So it's excellent oil. I've been using it for many years. And the filter, got my filter here. There are a lot of people make filters for the bike. Obviously you can buy the Triumph one, but be aware that Triumph don't actually make filters, they buy them from somebody else. I use these HiFlo filters in virtually all of my bikes. I think they're excellent performance. The number you need for the Triumph Scrambler is the HF204, which you can see, well, certainly when I take it out of the box, you'll see it's actually quite a small filter in comparison to some of my other bikes. So that's all we need for the oil and filter change. A couple of basic tools, which I'll talk about as I do the job. Normally when I'm working on my bikes, I put them up on my hydraulic workbench, but there's not really a necessity to do that. So firstly, because it's a fairly simple, straightforward job, you can just do it on the floor. And secondly, you know, if you're watching this video and it's the first time you've worked on your bike, I just want to show that you don't need a lot of fancy equipment. You can do it just on the workshop floor. I have got the bike up, you can see there, I have actually got the bike up on a paddock stand, and that's really just to hold it upright. You can do it just keeping it on the sight stand here, and if you want the bike more upright, you just put a block or something underneath the sight stand. So just looking underneath the bike here, sorry if I'm a bit wobbly, I'm holding the camera by hand. So this is the sight stand, we're just behind the sight stand here. There's the engine oil drain plug, and there is the oil filter. So they're very easy to get to there. So what I'm going to do first of all is undo the drain plug, let the oil start draining out, and then I'll remove the oil filter whilst the oil's draining out. To remove the engine oil drain plug, you need a 8mm Allen key, and of course I've got my drain bucket underneath here to, once you've clicked that off it just unscrews. Got my drain bucket underneath here to catch the oil as it comes out. And remember, I've warmed up the engine before doing this. I've just come around the other side of the bike just to say, to help draining the oil out, it helps if you undo the oil filler cap, which is here. It's not absolutely essential to undo it to drain the oil, but you know, let's air it at the top of the system as the oil's coming out the bottom, so it helps. And undoing the oil filler cap is one area where the high exhaust on the Scrambler really doesn't help, because you can't get in there easily. It's an Allen screw, 10mm Allen head screw in there, but also the side is nuts, so you've got a couple of different options. One thing that you can do is very carefully with a set of grips, maybe using a rag or something like that, just get hold of the knurling and just undo it, and you just have to just enough just to loosen it off, and then you can do it by hand the rest of the way. The other alternative, which I'm going to do, is I've got a 10mm socket here on a long extension, going to thread it down from the top behind the exhaust pipe where it goes down quite easily, and then you can loosen it off with that. And I just really just need to click it to get it loose, because now it's coming off, and I'll probably just do that by hand now. Yeah, and there's the cap off. So let the oil drain out. So that oil's nearly finished draining out now, so I'm going to remove the filter. To remove the oil filter, you've got a couple of options. You can use something like one of these, if I can get it in the camera. Yeah, one of these, which in actual fact will work on here, because you've got plenty of, well, you can't see from my hand there, you've got plenty of space to move it on there. That will work. But what I prefer to use is one of these type ones, which just fits on the bottom of the filter, and then you undo it with a ratchet drive. It's going to be difficult to film this because I can't get the camera somewhere where my hand is not in the way, but we'll try. Just point out that another alternative method for removing the oil filter is the old school method. Get a screwdriver, something like this, and whack it into the side of the oil filter with a mallet. Obviously that destroys the oil filter, but it doesn't matter because it's coming off, and then you can use that as a lever to then loosen off the oil filter. So if you're really stuck, you can do that. A bit more brutal, but it works. Right, that's the old filter off. Just let the oil drain off from round there, the filter housing, and then I'm going to clean that all up carefully to make sure there's no dirt or anything on there before I put the new filter on. Before I refit the sump plug here, I need to put a new crush wash on it, and I tend to use these copper washers. So just find one the right size. That's the right size there, so that's good. You can reuse those. If you see on some of the other videos, I think I was doing a service on my Norton Commando and I showed how you can re-anneal those and reuse them. So I'm just going to wipe around the sump to clean any dirt, oil off there, and then I'll refit that sump plug. Right, so that's the sump plug back in. Now, I confess that when I'm changing the oil on my bikes, normally I just nip that sump plug up, but the official setting on it is 25 Newton meters of torque. So as I'm doing this video on the internet, better do it properly. So I've got my little torque wrench out. This is my small one. This only goes up to about 35 Newton meters. So I've set that to 25 Newton meters. So I will just put it in there and nip that up to the right torque setting. And then internet critics can't have a go at me. So here's the new oil filter. Before fitting it, I'm just going to pour a little bit of oil in it to prime it. It's not essential, but it just means that when you start the engine, you're not starting with a dry oil filter. And also, I'll just take some of that oil and just run it with my finger around the rubber seal there, and just to lubricate that. When you get that new filter on, you don't want to tighten it up too much, so I've actually just done that by hand, as tight as I can get it by hand, and I'm just wiping all around now to make sure that there's no oil, so I can spot if there's a leak once I start the engine. You don't want to do it down too tight, and because of where this oil filter is, you can actually get your hand to it and get a good grip on it, so I can just do it up as tight as I can with my hand. If you're doing a lot of off-road riding on rough surfaces, you might be worried about it vibrating off, so you maybe want to nip it up a little bit tighter. But what I will do is I'll take the bike for a run, and then after a couple of days I will check it again, just to make sure that it's not loose. And you know, if it's as tight as I can get it with my fingers now, it should be that tight a couple of days. Also means it's not too difficult to get off when you come to change it again. Okay, so that's the filter changed. Let's top up the engine oil then. Okay, so I've brought you back round the other side of the bike again. So I've drained out the old engine oil, replaced the drain plug. I've replaced the oil filter, so it's time to now fill the bike up with some fresh oil. Already removed the drain plug, if you remember, to help the oil drain. Now, the engine oil capacity of the bike is 3.2 litres if you're doing an oil change, or it says 3.4 litres if you're doing an oil and filter change. Well, of course, I've done an oil and filter change, but I did pour some oil into the filter, so I expect it to be somewhere between those two. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put about 3.2 litres in, and then I'll start checking down on the sight glass down here to see where the oil level is. Now, when I'm doing an oil change, rather than just pour the oil straight in from the jug, from the bottle, sorry, I prefer to use a measuring jug like this. Then I know exactly how much is going in. This is a 2 litre measuring jug, so I'm going to put just over, well, I'm going to put 1.6 litres in, pour that in, another 1.6 litres, pour that in, and then I'll have a look, and that way I'm not guessing, I know exactly how much oil has gone in. Now, another problem that you've got with the Scrambler is because of this exhaust in the way, it's very tricky getting a funnel in here. So I've made up my own little contraption here. I've got this fairly long funnel, but even then that's not quite long enough. So I fastened this little bit of pipe on the end, and so I can thread that down here. I'll zoom the camera out in a sec, but thread that down and put it into the oil filling cap, and then I can top up the oil through there. I'll zoom out so you can see the whole process. I've zoomed the camera out here so you can see the funnel. See, I've got the funnel with my extension pipe down there. If you're keen eyes, you'll see that's actually a Harley Davidson funnel. I think it's the only tool I ever bought from Harley Davidson. I've got 1.6 litre in my measuring jug, and I'm going to pour that in. Now, I have to pour that quite slowly because it is a very narrow funnel, and particularly with that bit of pipe on the end. So just got to be patient and pour it in nice and slowly. So I won't bore you by videoing the whole process. I'll fast forward on it. Okay, that's the first 1.6 litres in. So I'm going to refill this measuring jug with another 1.6 litres and run that in. So this is the second jug full, another 1.6 litres. Pour this in, so that will give me a total of 3.2 litres, which should be getting fairly close, and then I'll have a look in the glass. That is the second jug in, and I've just zoomed in on the sight glass, and the oil level should be within the range of this mark here. So that's the low bit and that's the high bit, and you can see it's sitting right in the middle there. You can see the dark bit's the oil at the bottom, light bit at the top where there's no oil. So that oil level is correct now, but what I'm going to do is just run the engine briefly, just for a few minutes, to get the oil circulating around the engine again and through the oil filter, and then I'll switch the engine off, let it sit for a couple of minutes just for the oil to settle, and check that level and top it up if necessary. If you're doing this, just make sure that you're in a well ventilated space when you start the bike. You don't want to be gassing yourself. Alright, I've run the engine and just let it settle again. You maybe can't see from the angle that you're looking at, but when I look at it, because you're looking down slightly at it there from the camera, but the oil level has, it's still okay, but it's not right to the bottom of that mark. So I'm just going to put a touch more oil in there, top it up, and then I will nip up the filler cap, and that's the oil change done. Right, so the next job is changing the air filter, and I'm going to replace the standard paper air filter with this DNA long life high performance filter, and there's a couple of reasons I'm doing this. One is purely economic. These last for ages. You just need to wash them, re-oil them, using the kit that come. I use these filters in most of my bikes. I obviously use reusable filters in my dirt bikes, my off-road bikes, but also my Harley Davidson, my Triumph T140 and my Norton Commander all have reusable air filters. So I've got all the kit. I'm quite used to using those. I've got all the kit for cleaning them and re-oiling them. So it just makes sense to me. It works out a lot cheaper over the life of the bike if you're doing your servicing yourself, because you can just take it out, clean it and replace the same filter. Another thing is they're supposed to enhance the performance. I have to say that's not the main reason that I'm doing it, but because they improve the airflow, and because the airflow is better for longer, they don't clog up as fast as paper filters, then they're supposed to offer better performance. So that's another factor. I'll see if it improves the performance. Not particularly looking for more performance, but it'd be a benefit. And of course, another factor is I think it's just more environmentally friendly, because you're not replacing and throwing away paper filters all the time. So I'm going to fit this new filter. It fits in behind here. You've got to remove this side panel and remove the fuse box and the relays and things there, and then you can get access to the old filter. So I'll take this off and show you what I'm doing as I work my way through. So this side panel just clips off, it just pulls off. So if you pull it off from the rear first, and there's a couple of clips at the front, you can pull it off. And incidentally, if you've not had it off before, you can see clipped on the inside of here, that is the toolkit. That is the total extent of I'll just bring it in a bit closer to the camera. That is the total extent of the tools that come with this bike. This one little key here that's got like a flathead headed screwdriver on this end, and then like an Allen driver on that end. And that's it. That's all you get with the bike. Anyway, that's the side panel off, and you can see it fastens on with these 3 points here, which incidentally I just put a little bit of rubber grease on those just to lubricate them. And then what we've got here is the various relays, the fuse box. This is the fuse box. This extra stuff here that's the extra wiring that I put in to go up to my navigator system, the front. So I've wired that in from here, and that's an inline fuse. This is the plug for you plug into the diagnostics for the ECU diagnostics. I'll be coming to that later when I run all the diagnostic checks and reset the service interval. The first thing you've got to do then is remove this plate. It's a T20 torque thing, but what I'll do is I'll just pull these various relays off. They just clip on. Pull the relays off first, and then it's easier to remove the fuse box as well. It's easier to remove the plate if you just unclip all of those first. There we are, that's them off. Now there's this big fuse here, the big 30 amp fuse as well, which you've got to disconnect. But anyway, I'll unscrew these torque first. So there's 4 of them, I should say. This one here, or I'll zoom in, hang on, so you can see better. Right, hopefully you can see there's 4. There's this one here, one here, and one down there. So I'll just undo those. I've done all 4 screws on here now, so this is loose. So this 30 amp fuse you have to feed through the gap there, and then you can pull this plate out of the way. I've not taken these ones off the bottom because you don't need to, just tuck them out of the way. And there we are, we've got to this is the cover on the air filter. So again, got to undo, already done that top one there, so got to undo these other 3 Torx fasteners, and then we can get the air filter out. Just move the camera so you've hopefully got a better view of what I'm doing, but I've taken the screws out of the cover, and this just slides out, and this is the housing for the air filter. Bit fiddly to get it past this cabling. Just going to wiggle it a little bit, it does flex. Get that out. There's that big main harness there in the way. Right, there we are, and that's the air filter house. So that's the old air filter there, the paper one, which just sits in, and pull it out, and that's the outside edge of it. You see there's a few bits of seeds and things caught in there. Looks like you can see. Right, and that I can see that it's quite dirty, is that filter. So that's going in the bin, and it's going to be replaced by the new fabric filter. So here's the new DNA fabric filter. Just taking it out of its packaging. You can see it's like a mesh, well, holds it in place, and that's fabric, oiled fabric side. That's oiled. Compare it to the old paper filter. Get the 2 side by side there. You can see. So pop this into the filter housing. So it just slots in place like that, and then we can reinsert that into the airbox. As you slide it in, you've got to make sure that it sits in place at both ends, and you know you've got it in right when it sits flush, when it sits right in flush like that. So I know I've got that in there, and it's located at the other side, you know, the back side of the bike, in the slot there. Right, so I can now reinsert the Torx screws and fasten this in. Right, so that's the filter housing back in. Put this plate that holds the fuses and relays and things. Got to tuck that 30 amp fuse back through the hole there, and then everything realigns, and I can put these other screws back in here now to fasten this plate back in. Right, fuse box back in place. Just clips on there. All these relays are still where I had them before, so put these ones back on. It's fairly obvious what order they go in because of the cables. It's not critical, of course. They'll just clip on like that. Oops. Then just make sure everything else is sitting neatly back in where it should do. Took everything in because obviously I sort of pulled it all out to so that's everything tucked back in there. Right, I'm not going to bother putting the panel back on because the next job is going to be to plug in the diagnostic tool and do the electronic check, so I'll just leave that as it is at the moment. If you own one of these Scramblers, you may have seen the video on YouTube done by Tech Bike Parts in which they fit the HiFlo air filter and then remove the Snorkel from the intake of the airbox, and they say that that improves the airflow and therefore the performance. So hey, in for a penny, in for a pound. As I've fitted a HiFlo air filter, it's not a K&N like the one which Tech Parts sell. It's actually a DNA one, but I might as well have a go. So let's have a look at that. So if I remove the seat, and then you have to remove this plate here to get to the air intake. There's just 3 screws. There's 2 here and one at the back. Just holds this plate in place. By the way, if you're wondering what these cables are here, one of them is for my electrically heated vest in winter, and the other one is to connect the battery up to mate or any other accessories. They both just link directly to the battery, so I can just plug stuff in like that, and they've both got an inline fuse on them, obviously. Right, so that's the plate off. And this is the air snorkel. I'll just move the camera in a little bit closer. I've just moved the camera around so where you've hopefully got a better angle. So this is the air box here, this is the air intake, and this is the snorkel that I was referring to. And it's just a soft rubber snorkel, so that just pulls out. Just ease it out over the rim, and then hopefully we'll be good to go without it. Now all I'm going on here is what they say in the actually that's a bit fiddly to get out. Right, so that's it out. So I'm just going so that the air can go straight in there, and I can see the filter down there. If I move the camera around, you may be able to see that. Okay, so we're looking straight in there, and you can see that's the air filter there. So now the air can just go straight in, straight to the filter, and straight through to the fuel injectors. Whereas before, with that snorkel, it sort of directed the air over and back round again. So I'm just taking on face value what's said on the Tech Bike Parts video about that improving the airflow. They said they'd done some flow testing on that. So yeah, give that a go and see what happens. So what you have to do then is sort of recalibrate the system, which you do by switching on the engine without touching the throttle. Let it warm up, let the bike run for about 20 minutes on tick over, and the ECU automatically recalibrates for that. So I'll be doing that when I finish this video. Whether it'll make a big difference or not, I don't know, but give it a go and see. Just whilst I've got the seat off, I've just put this cover back on, but just before I put the seat back on, I'll just show you, this is the little compartment here which is supposed to be for your mobile phone, what have you. But I keep in here some spare batteries for the key fob and some spare fuses, and it's just, to be honest, that's about as much as you can fit in there, but it's just a convenient place to put those. And then, you know, you've always got some spare batteries with you for the key fob, or, you know, if you've got a fuse go or anything, and they're just conveniently located under there. Right, so now for the bit which I suspect many of you are particularly interested in, which is running the electronic diagnostic error check and then resetting the service interval. Before I go on to do this, I just want to reiterate that there are a lot of other things that you need to do as part of the 10,000 mile service other than what I've shown on this video, and I'll refer you again to the service check sheet which I'm working from here, a copy of which you can download from my Facebook page should you wish. If you go to Songs from the Saddle Facebook page, there's a link on here, and then look for Triumph Scrambler 1200 service sheet, and you'll be able to find a copy of the official Triumph service sheet here. So a lot of other things I've checked. For example, I've checked the spark plugs, I've checked the adjustment on a lot of things, lubrication, things like that. I'm not going to go through all those minor details. Let's get into doing this electronic diagnosis and resetting of the service then. To do this, I am using a piece of software called DealerTool. I've made a separate video about DealerTool, so if you're unfamiliar with it, please go and have a look at the separate video that I did. I'll leave a link at the end of this video. But essentially, you plug it in to down here. You plug it into your ECU diagnostic plug, which is under this left-hand side cover. What you get from DealerTool, and by the way, I'm not at all affiliated with them, I'm just a user here, is you get this dongle which plugs in here, the other end plugs into your laptop, and then you download some software. So I'll move my camera, so I've got it on the laptop screen, the best that I can, get it on the laptop screen so you can see what I'm doing, and then I'll run through the checks. Right, here we are. On my laptop screen, I've just got the laptop on the seat of my bike, and I've got that set up the best I can for you to see. So just to reiterate, I've got the laptop plugged into the ECU diagnostic plug, which is under the left hand side cover with the fuse box, what have you. Then I've got the software loaded up here. So what you have to do first of all is switch the bike ignition on, which on the Scrambler is pressing the top of the ignition switch forward. And then once the ignition's come on, you then knock it into the run position. So I'll do that now. So that's the ignition just coming on. You can't see, obviously. And that's fired up. So then I put it back into the run position. Not actually starting the engine. You don't need to start the engine, but I've got it in the run position. So first thing I'm going to do now is if I go to the ECU data tab at the top here, click on that, and then I will click on read ECU data, and what that'll do is check my bike and make sure that I've actually got this bike registered with DealerTool. And it's coming up with a message here which says ECU data was received, ECU is registered, which means that I'm all set up with this bike to use this tool. So I can close this back to the main page. And there are various menus along the top here of different things that you can do. I went through those in more detail in my previous video, so I'm just going to do two things. One is I'm going to run for fault checks, so it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th menu along here, check faults. It's now reading the ECU for that. So I'm just going to check to see if there's any faults come up. And then the other thing I'm going to do is then reset the service interval, which means, you know, the little spanner icon that comes up on your dashboard won't come up for another year or another 10,000 miles. So it's just coming towards the end of the analysis. There's no fault codes showing there. Hopefully you can read that. Any fault codes which show in the window There's no fault codes, which means I've got no issues with the bike, which is great. So I will close that, back to the main menu, and then there's various other things that you can do, but look at my other video to go through that. And then I'm going to go to the Instruments tab, and that's where you can then set the reset the service interval. So the default there is 6,000 miles, which for some triumphs it's 6,000. So I'll just increase that up to 10,000. So 10,000 miles or 365 days. So that'll be the reset the service interval. So rewrite instruments, click on that one. It's sending that information to the bike. So it says at the bottom there, instrument service interval was updated. So now when you switch on the bike and it tells you how long to the next service, that's all reset. And so I'm good to go. And so it is as simple as that. That's the service complete. So there you have it. That's the 10,000 mile service on my Triumph Scrambler 1200 completed. I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you found it interesting, and if you own one of these bikes, if you're a relatively new owner, I hope you found it useful. As I mentioned at the start of the video, one of the things that I picked up when I was cleaning the bike yesterday is that I really need to fit a new chain. So I'm going to fit a new chain and sprockets. So I'm actually just about to go away for 3 weeks. So I'll save that till when I get back. I'm not going on this bike, I'm going on one of the other bikes. So when I get back, I will make a video of changing the chain and sprockets. If you're interested in that, please give the channel a like, hit the notification bell, and hopefully I'll see you again soon in the future. Thanks, bye.